All right, US Vice President JD Vance is on his very first visit to India. He's at the 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, Prime Minister's residence, and now all eyes are trained on the crucial bilateral meeting. Remember, Vice President Vance's visit comes after US President Donald Trump imposed and then paused a sweeping tariff regime against 60 countries. It also comes in the wake of New Delhi and Washington holding negotiations to seal a bilateral trade agreement that is expected to address a variety of issues, including tariff and market access. As India and the United States eye augmenting bilateral trade to $500 billion, the Modi-Vance meeting is expected to pave the way for deeper cooperation in various sectors, including defense, technology and trade. Meanwhile, India is all set to send a team of 5 to 6 negotiators led by Additional Commerce Secretary Rajesh Agarwal to the United States on the 23rd of April. We'll talk about this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Ambassador Deepak Vora, former diplomat, Mrs. Scott Faulkner, head of Eagle Enterprises, Martin Sa-Erez, foreign affairs expert, is also with us. Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat, joins us on the show as well. Mika Pickers, US foreign policy expert, also with us on the broadcast. Ambassador Vora, I'll begin with you, sir. Well, you know, the Vice President is in India. He was on a personal trip, but when you are, a breath away from the presidency of the United States, you possibly cannot take a break. This is obviously a good opportunity for, the Prime Minister of India as well as the Vice President to pick on each other's brains and understand what we can avoid and what we cannot avoid. According to you and your long career as a diplomat and somebody who understands the granularities of this association, what is going to be the priority? And like they say in colloquial Mumbaiya, Vance pe chance is perhaps the keyword today.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Always a pleasure to be with you. And you, of course, yourself are a foreign service kid, so you understand better than many of us do what is going on. Let me put it to you, you've used the term private visit. We wouldn't give him a guard of honor if it was an entirely private visit. There's an official element. There's an element of privateness, so to speak, in the visit because he's brought his 3 kids along. And look at the dignity and grace with which they went to Akshardham. By the way, that temple represents the essence of Sanatan Dharma. Across the world, they have so many. They went there straight and I could see the kids wearing kurta pajama. It looked very nice. It was very good to bring the family along with them. All this thing about discovering their roots, etc. Essentially, let me put it to you like this, sir. 52 years in diplomacy and counting, I've never seen this velocity of circulation of contacts between India and the United States. I've served there. We had President Donald Trump speak to the Prime Minister soon after his election. Then we had the visit of the Prime Minister. Then we had External Affairs Minister present at President Donald Trump's inauguration. Our Prime Minister went there. Then we had their Director of National Intelligence come here. We had NSA's meeting. We now have the Finance Minister somewhere, our Finance Minister in San Francisco. We are talking about essentially a new level of relationship, a quantum leap. Let me put it to you like this, sir. What does the United States want from India? Essentially our market and our support in its contestation, I'm not saying conflict, with China. We are a swing country. Now, President Donald Trump did use some language saying that, so many fellows have been calling me and they are kissing my whatever. And so I've decided to suspend these tariffs for some time, etc. If we are going to get a deal, and we are, there's no doubt about it, then that becomes a plus point, a talking point, telling the other fellows, look, I have a deal with the 3rd or 4th largest economy in the world, with one of the world's most important powers. What's wrong with you fellows? Why can't you do the same with me? It gives him an advantage as far as the weightage on his side is concerned. For us, we were the first movers. And I believe that we are going to get, I don't know if it's going to be zero tariff, but we are going to get a trade deal that is acceptable and beneficial to both sides. And it's going to come quicker than you can say Donald Trump and Narendra Modi. It's going to come very, very quickly. I would be very excited. I'd be very happy to see that happen because this relationship, sir, whatever the cobwebs of the past, I believe with the dark state or whatever you call it having been dismantled, now I believe nothing can stop us. Somebody asked me, is the sky the limit in the relationship? Buddy, there is no limit in this relationship.
Absolutely right, sir. Mr. Scott Faulkner is also with us on the program. Scott, appreciate you being here and good to have you on the show once again. Well, JD Vance is in New Delhi at this point in time. I'm going to take a leaf out of what Ambassador Vora also said, that both the countries need each other. The Americans need access to our markets. We obviously need the American support when it comes to a number of geopolitical issues as well. And the Americans also need the Indian support when it comes to their geopolitical needs and insecurities. How do you think this relationship is likely to pan out now that you have a affirmative, a positive approach from both the leaders, the Vice President as well as the Prime Minister, going into this bilateral?
I think all roads lead through India in terms of Trump's engagement with China, in terms of his trying to totally reinvent our supply chain to bring certain key industries back into the United States, but then taking other key industries outside of China. India is going to be the location of choice. The relationship that Trump has personally with Modi, obviously JD Vance has an Indian wife, Usha, and children who are embracing their Indian heritage. So I think that, just like the ambassador just said, I think we're about to have a golden age for India in the world, and certainly a golden age of India with the United States.
Okay, let me in fact rope in Martin also in this conversation as well. Martin, India and America, of course, paving the way for the future in terms of trade and bonhomie. Despite our differences, be it buying oil from Russia, or not supporting the Americans when it comes to resolutions against Russia at the UN, it still seems to be an association which is friendly in nature. Martin, you're muted.
Diplomacy is not in the same way than the trade relations, but actually I have a very positive feeling since President Modi has the same, is a conservative like Donald Trump, and actually this time is a perfect time for strengthen U.S. and India's relationships, because we are in a, right now we are in a cold trade war. The U.S. is very afraid of China having influence in Asia, and actually I see that there's a huge potential for negotiations. We need to remember India and the U.S. are working towards finalizing the initial phase of bilateral trade agreement by autumn 2025, and India has expressed willingness to reduce tariffs on over half of its 40 billion worth of 2024. So I think imports from the US are aiming to double bilateral trade by 2030. So I think it's a very positive trend.
All right, some breaking news coming in. JD Vance and Prime Minister Modi and their bilateral has started, and the bilateral is likely to focus on trade, tariffs and crucial elements of the relationship between both these great nations. I'm going to go back to Ambassador Deepak Vora as well. Ambassador Vora, obviously it's important for us to focus on the positive. We are going to look at the half glass full over here, but a lot of people who are being deported or are not getting visas or are not getting the support that they are so used to when it comes to Indian companies in the United States are going to feel the heat. Is this conversation also going to be about them? Let's not forget, sir, that for the longest period of time, the Americans have welcomed Indian technocrats, if I can call it, to their country and used them to prosper.
There's no doubt about it. These are irritants in a bilateral relationship. There's never a perfect relationship between two countries. Even though you hop into bed together, it's not ever darling, darling, sweetheart, sweetheart. There will be minor irritants. I've been married, my wife and I, for 48 years. I don't have another one. I have one. And we do have these minor irritants. Nevertheless, the macro relationship is very strong, very stable. Why are you cooking this? Why are you eating this? Why are you wearing? All that will go on. But basically, sir, America is the world's greatest technology supplier. They have technology that we want, whether it's medical or it's in education, or it's in space, or it's in defense, or it's under the sea. We don't need to reinvent that. Yes, of course, the Americans also realize that if you deny it to us, as they did to us with the cryogenic technology, we'll build it ourselves. And we Indians are very smart. And then America needs, if I may say so, human resource. talented human. So we have two kids, my wife and I, and we've gifted both to the United States. Both are what you would call in some sense technocrats. They're very happy in the United States. I have two granddaughters. They consider America their home. They were little, they would say, so, sweetheart, where are you going? Oh, grandpa, we are going back to Manerica. They couldn't say America, we are going to Manerica. That is our home. So this is the openness of American society. I spent 3.5 years posted there. I go twice in a year. It's a very welcoming society. And now we are beginning to realize the full potential. People-to-people contact is very good. But the important thing, I believe, is that we get what we need, they get what they need. We don't even intend to supplant them as number one in the world as China is attempting to do. We're just telling them, give us what we want, help us to become your most reliable partner in Asia. Let me put it to you like this, something about growing Chinese influence. Don't believe a word of it. See what's happened to Sri Lanka, see what's happening in the Maldives, see what's happening in Nepal, see what's happening in Myanmar. China was making inroads. Wherever they've gone, they left a trail of blood, and then India has to go in and clean it up. America understands this very well. If there's one country that they leave out this neighbor of ours who keeps fighting with us because that's his destiny, he claims. Leave him out, but everybody else understands that if cleaning up has to be done, if there has to be trust, then the one country they trust totally is India, sir, in our neighborhood.
Mr. Faulkner, do you concur that times have definitely changed? India is aggressive, India is ambitious, and the fact of the matter is, regardless of how good a friend you are, I mean, look at the relationship between the Americans and the Canadians today. You are practically picking up the spears against each other. It's normal to live through these differences. It's also normal to quantify these differences. But what's most important, and something that the Americans can learn from the Indians, is, sir, that despite your differences, you can still prosper and be friends.
Oh, absolutely. But also you have to understand Trump's negotiating style. I mean, he clearly rose up in his to become a billionaire and to become prominent as a national leader in the real estate market of Manhattan in New York City, and that's a very sharp elbows, push people around kind of environment. And so his Art of the Deal, which a lot of people have read and should read, he literally starts with his most brutal opening, and then he eases back. And I think that's what we're seeing with these tariff wars around the world, is that he basically threw down a gauntlet that was a lot of people viewed as extreme, and now he's rolling back as he's negotiating with everybody. That's his style. Everybody's gotten used to it, and I think that India will benefit from it.
Mr. Faulkner, how do you think Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump complement each other when it comes to their personalities?
They clearly have a warm personal relationship. I think as you look at Trump's interaction with other Western leaders, I mean, he just had the Italian Prime Minister there. They certainly have a warm relationship. He clearly has a close relationship with the Prime Minister of Israel, and certainly several people, El Salvador, Argentina. But when it comes to the first tier of leaders in the world, Modi and Trump's relationship is probably the closest in certainly recent history.
Right. Martin, your views on a new world order which is obviously going to be led by India. But there's this China question also that keeps popping up, isn't it? Should both the countries take China with them? Do we have to work against China? Let's not forget, the muscle flexing and the posturing that China continues to do militarily against countries like Taiwan and smaller countries that it has lent money to. That is obviously a concern which the Americans share with India.
I think India needs to take advantage of this situation, and actually think there's huge potential for good deals between the US and India because of the China threat, let's call it like that. I don't think that China right now is a huge threat. It's a threat, but I think that with Donald Trump trying to gain a lot of popularity and a lot of cooperation with Asian countries, I think this is the opportunity for India to have mutual cooperation and have trade agreements that can be beneficial for both. I don't think India should be straightforward or going to a trade or a bellical war with China in a direct way. But I think India should be in the side of the US right now for its own interest. I think both governments are in the same way of thinking about geopolitics, about trade, about free market. So I think the main topics that India should put in the table is the avoidance of US tariffs by engaging in trade negotiations, increasing market access for Indian exporters with greater access to the US market, and energy and technology collaboration. I think those are essential topics in this new trade world order.
And Ambassador Vora, I take a lot of respite in the fact that when Hindus were being ill-treated in Bangladesh, it was Donald Trump, who raised a voice. He was the sharp one out, who picked out on the government in Bangladesh and said that this is not going to be tolerated. And in fact, he perhaps did that not to please India, but that just goes on to show you that this is the mark of a world leader, which Prime Minister Modi already is.
So these two people are not politicians, they are statesmen, sir. I'm talking about President Donald Trump and I'm talking about Prime Minister Narendra Modi. They have a certain reputation. In that, whatever that morning consulting, it keeps giving you an assessment of the popularity of world leaders week to week. And Narendra Modi has been consistently over the last 3 years, because I see it every week, has been ranking very high. But let me tell you one other thing, sir, which to me is very significant. Now, President Donald Trump, when the two prime ministers met, the joint statement also, for the first time ever, referred to a certain country saying they have to contain terrorism, a third country, terrorism, etc., etc. And then President Trump referred to this Purana, whatever the fool's name is, as one of the very evil people, and he was going to send him back to India. Now, contrast this with those jokers across the pond. A country, I think it's called Little Britain, if I remember correctly. It lasted many years ago. It was great. Now it's Little Britain. And we wanted these two economic offenders. This was 3 days ago, sir. Your channel covered it. We wanted them back. And some court there said, oh, please tell us which presidential suite you're going to put these prisoners in. Have these guys gone mad? 78 years ago, we booted them out of India, but they still think that they have some kind of influence. Whereas the United States, the Americans went, justice means justice. If a chap is an offender, he's committed a crime, he has to be punished. What is your concern about his, whether we are going to give him a Mercedes vehicle to receive him at the airport with police honors and so on and so forth? A proclaimed economic offender. These guys are funny. I don't even know they realize the message they're sending to the rest of the world, that they are becoming the fugitive capital of the world. I'm talking of London. By contrast, America has sent the message, and by deporting these Indians, terrible, you are shackling them, you're handcuffing them. But the message went out from the director of ICE. If you want to come to America legally, come. If you want to come illegally, this is what is going to happen to you. Don't come, because this is a system where justice is swift, justice is quick, and justice serves the purpose for which it is meant. Now this joker wants to speak to his family, and the court somewhere in India, good Lord, says, they want some kind of government response. What do you think if... I don't know. I don't know what the government will respond. But the basic assessment is that wherever we have wanted, you remember, sir, there is that character called Jagmeet Singh or something like that in Canada, who's a big rebel and a chap who's conspiring against India. And the new director of the FBI, I saw this on X, which is owned by this chap, whom I call the king, the king of future technology, Elon Musk, who's coming here very quickly. And I saw on X that the new director of the FBI told this Jagmeet Singh that don't you dare come to the United States, we'll arrest you and deport you to India. So the fellow is hiding in a basement somewhere, he doesn't want to get out. Now this is the kind of thing that pleases us. This is the kind of thing that would please the United States if they wanted us to send a terrible fellow back to them, a very nasty fellow, we'd do it. But this is how the bilateral trust is maintained. Sir, I tell you, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to evaluate Americans' present relationship, Bharat and America, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would rank it at 15.
Okay, Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, also joins us. Professor Nalapat, we've been waiting for you eagerly and to understand and learn from you. What would this bilateral mean, considering the fact that there's been so much back and forth that has taken place in the last few weeks when it comes to deportations, when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to geopolitical security, when it comes to wars, when it comes to the Middle East? What's your take on this bilateral, sir?
Look, the fact is that India or any other country is not exempt from any of those tariffs and deportations. The only point is that the percentage of Indian students deported is small, and most of them were deported because they went into altercations with the police. Now, in India, that may be commonplace, but it should not be in the US. So I'd like to say that the bulk of those cases are not because of any links to terror organizations. In fact, that's why even the small number surprised me at first. But because of altercations with the police, a lot of them are now under legal process. A lot of them have been temporarily stayed. I would like to tell you, the US, like India, is a country governed by the rule of law, and you have a very strong federal and state judiciary, and the students weren't there. And in many cases, the police cases were withdrawn. Sometimes police just file, almost without thinking. And if I may say so, that's not the case only with the United States. It happens in some other countries as well. You have to file cases very carefully because a case can have a devastating impact on an individual, and you have to think 9 times before you file a case, quite frankly. But I'd like to say that overall, the Vance visit is not just about optics. It's not just about Usha and JD Vance having a lovely time in India as tourists. There is a lot of serious business to be discussed, and I think the Vances made a very, very lovely start to their voyage, their voyage on the shores of India by going to the Akshardham temple, and also they are visiting, I'm told, Jaipur. But the most important thing by far is the bilateral conversation he'll have with Prime Minister Modi, where the entire gamut of US-India relations is going to be discussed. And I can tell you, I am very hopeful the visit will end well. And the reason is that Indian students or whatever, they have been very instrumental in the growth of the United States technology. And if the United States want to keep ahead of China, they will need people from India. So I'd like to say that Trump is a practical man. He understands that. I mean, look, he ran so many enterprises, and many of the enterprises, quite frankly, I mean, whether they checked all the legal documents of people they were employing, I'm not saying Donald Trump, but those working under him, well, possibly not. So he's a practical man. JD Vance is the Vice President of the United States. That's not a small job. As Scott will tell you, who's a tremendously keen observer of the United States and India, if I may say so. I know that Scott loves India, and I hope he'll come here very soon. But the reality is, it's a very important visit. A lot of substantive issues will be discussed, but don't expect all of them to come on the front page. I mean, I am amazed to find some former diplomats saying that, oh, that hasn't been publicly expressed. So, very important. The fact is, a lot of things that are not publicly expressed are important, and that's something we need to remember. Thank you.
Well said, sir. Let's take a reaction from Scott. I know he loves India. In fact, I got to see that love when Scott was in India just a few weeks ago. And of course, it's important to understand the pathology of India when dealing with America. And Scott, it's obviously a born homie that is undeniable at this point in time.
Absolutely. I mean, again, any official visit is a combination of symbolism and substance. We've talked a lot about the substance, but when you realize that our vice president is married to an Indian, I mean, that's about as symbolic as it can get and substantive as it can get, is that he fell in love with an Indian woman. He has spends many many hours, many days with her family, who are all from India. And so it's that marriage of love that is manifested in the Vice President and Usha, I think is a strong symbol of the kind of marriage in love, in politics, in economics that is going to be evolving between India and the United States.
Martin, your reaction to what Professor Nalapad said, that this is not optics alone. I think we've gone beyond those days when optics did most of the foreign policy processing, but now it's right down to brass tacks.
Of course, the human and personal factor is a key factor. I mean, if you look at Donald Trump's profile and Modi's profile, both are trade people, both are businessmen, and both are traditional people who want the best for their countries. They are nationalist people. They usually have the support from people who are usually patriots. And yeah, the fact that Vance is married to an Indian lady it also shows that this is a personal also relationship. I mean, with politicians, it's not always about the formal protocols or the formal traits. Also, like the human fact can make huge impacts in trade agreements, in being closer to the politicians in a more human way. So I think it's absolutely amazing, this fact, and I think this will help a lot to increase and strengthen the relationship between India and the US.
And Ambassador Vora, taking a leaf out of what the other panelists have also said, that this marriage between Mr. Vance and of course his wife is Indian, and then the openness and the idea of democratic tolerance that it brings about has always existed in India. Do you think that has always been a platform, a founding pillar of great democracies? And regardless of what you take away from both these countries, that soul is definitely going to stay there.
No question about it. Where is Prime Minister hosting the dinner? At his house or at Hyderabad House? I think he's hosting it at his own residence. I can't recall when he did that before for any other visiting leader. A very special gesture he's making. I've also read somewhere that Vice President JD Vance had become an atheist, and then when he met his wife, he then rediscovered religion, so to speak, and has become a practicing Christian, which is great because we are Sanatanis. Akshardham, where they went, is the world's greatest example of Sanatan Dharam, which means all of you are welcome. Our doors are open for everybody. I believe that is a very powerful statement. More than that, sir, forgive me, but the Baron of Business, i.e. Donald Trump, is meeting the Nawab of Negotiation, i.e. Narendra Modi. The two of them will get along very well together. And the interlocutor, the intermediary in this process at this time is a person called JD Vance. On a very personal note, when I was posted in the United States, some of my friends used to, I don't remember why, but they would call me John. My name is Deepak Vora. My initials are DV. So if I had John, it would become JDV, and JD Vance is also JDV. I was joking about it with somebody today. I don't know why they call me John. Well, my name is Deepak Vora. So in any case, it was wonderful to listen to see him being received, to see him patting the parade commander on the shoulder and saying well done, etc. It was just wonderful. There wasn't a misstep anywhere, and I don't think there will be, sir. This is what friendship is all about. Minor hiccups, we'll overcome them, but the basic trust, the fundamentals must be very solid, which they are.
And Professor Nalapad, there is a churn in the United States happening at this point in time as well. Country first is the approach that Donald Trump has decided to take, and that's in a sense very similar or analogous to an emotion or a philosophy that the Prime Minister also alluded to when he came to power in 2014.
Well, you're perfectly right, if I may say so. You're perfectly right. And if I may point out regarding Usha and JD, look, love, it doesn't happen by predetermination or something. It just happens. And the whole thing has been beautifully sketched by JD Vance in his really classic book, hillbilly elegy, which I would encourage everybody to read all over the world. The reality is theirs is a love, a very strong love, and that love carried JD Vance through some difficult times in the college and university. And he is very open about the fact that he may have given up because somehow, despite being quote unquote, in his own words, a hillbilly, he got admission to some of the best universities in the US on sheer merit. Well, Usha helped him through that bad patch. I'm sure he's helped her through many bad patches. And if I may point out, Vineet, Usha Vance is about as Indian as Scott Falk now. The reality is, parents are from India. They went there a long term back, and she was born in California, so she's a native Californian. And everybody in the United States, almost, except for the original American Indians, frankly, they are all come from some location or the other. So if you track back the roots, then Scott may be English, and other friends may be other things, and of course multiple identities. But the reality is, Usha Vance is as American as apple pie, and if I may say so, apple, our halwa mithai, because the open welcome Americans give different cultures, mithai is also becoming a part of American culture. Thank you, Vinny.
Right, Ambassador Vora has something to say to or respond to.
I was going through my notes and I remember that when COVID hit the United States and President Donald Trump won, called it kung fu and all kinds of things. And then he asked us for remdesivir and paracetamol. We removed the ban and we sent as much as they wanted. And then he tweeted, sir, I have the tweet somewhere in my notes, that India has been great. We will never forget. That comes from the heart, that we needed it, you gave it to us. Even though we didn't have, we had to deny ourselves it. It didn't work. The fact is we responded as America responded many times over magnificently when we needed those oxygen generators and all that other stuff. And I was listening to our outstanding former ambassador, Ambassador T.S. Sadhu. He actually wrote that Americans were coming to him when we were really reeling under the Chinese virus, coming to him and saying, what more can we do for India? This is America, sir. This is the greatness of that country, the openness of their hearts. And this is also the openness of our own hearts. So there is no, I don't see any reason for conflict, sir. There shouldn't be. We're not going to hurt them. We hope they won't hurt us. So that's it, sir.
And Mr. Faulkner, do you also feel that Donald Trump has a resentment towards a lot of forums and organizations, including the NATO and the World Health Organization, that he feels have taken America for granted, taken the maximum amount of money and given them the least amount of protection and visibility and respect, and perhaps that's good enough reason for him to understand the virtue that India brings to the table? You get what you see.
Oh, absolutely. Trump is a disruptor, and he is disrupting the entire world order because he's looking at it from a lens of America first. But he also recognizes that America cannot stand alone. And so when he looks out there and says, who out there can America depend on? Who out there is going to be part of America's inner circle as we move into the middle part of the 21st century? India is the place. And so India is about to enter into, I like to talk about the Go board. America plays whack-a-mole and checkers. A lot of the world plays chess. China plays Go, and America with India is going to dominate that Go board as they start to look at the mid part of this 21st century, economically, politically, militarily, culturally. America and India clearly have a strong bond on many fronts, and that bond's just going to get better.
Martin, do you concur with the resilience that India has shown, especially after COVID-19? We were one of the first few nations, to come back on track, after the entire world was dilapidated because of economic woes.
Yeah, so I think India should also be part of this trend of technology renovation. We need to remember in COVID, the US supplied with a lot of medical supply to India. And I think there's a good example of the benefits of being part of this deal with the US. I think India should cooperate more with the US. We need to remember the US is the larger beneficial of Indian trade. India exports generics in medicine, exports all kind of important supply in medicine too. So I think India should try to take advantage of this situation, expand its capacities of technology, and trying to make a deal so a free trade can be expanded with the US to lower the tariffs, to lower all of these barriers in free trade. So I think with these two leaders that believe in free trade, this can be possible.
Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, former diplomat, also joins us at this point in time. Ambassador Kapoor, thank you for being here, sir. Importance of this bilateral between the Vice President JD Vance and the Prime Minister. Of course, we have underscored a number of areas. A plethora of ideas have come through before you joined. But let's hear it from you as to why this is extremely crucial. I'm going to take a leaf out of what Professor Nalapat said, that this is not merely optics. I'm also going to take a leaf out of what Ambassador Vora said, that this is going to be the defining relationship for the next century.
Well, thank you very much. And I will be, trying not to repeat what the others have said, but it's not going to be easy because I've not been in on the talk for a long time. I think we'll have to mute Deepak Vora. That's better. Thank you. So I think this is a very important visit. It's going to mark a paradigm shift in our relationship because, if you look at JD Vance's current profile vis-a-vis President Trump, he is being given a lot of important assignments by the president, and he has been given a lot of leeway to take initiatives, to discuss matters, to present the American perspective globally and in the US. So JD Vance is going to be an important spokesperson for India. He will be like India's ambassador to the White House. If we are able to have a very substantial interaction with him. Now, having a person like JD Vance in the White House, inside the White House premises, whether he is doing, work from another wing of the White House, but all the same, it's still part of the White House. So, for us to have our spokesman, if we are able to, create that sort of profile vis-a-vis our interactions with him, for him to understand better the Indian cultural perspective, because what has been missing is some amount of sensitivity to each other's concerns, to each other's cultural backgrounds. So that sort of perspective JD Vance can bring in very properly, very appropriately, because he has been married to this very outstanding young lady called Usha Chilukuri Vance, who comes from a great heritage of, her father being an IIT professor, her father being an IIT graduate, her grandfather being an IIT graduate and an IIT professor. I don't know whether he was a graduate, but he was an IIT professor. And I'm from the IIT, so I can understand what her background is like and what she brings to the table. Now, if she is in that household 24/7, and JD Vance will have a lot of better understanding, because to negotiate with Indians is not an easy matter for any other delegation in the world, because we have our egos, we have our systems, we have our preferences, we have our cultural heritage, we have our great cultural arrogance also in a way, which we do not articulate. Now, for him to have understood all that, having been married to Usha Vance and sharing 3 kids together, I think he brings a lot of value to the negotiations for both the countries, for India and for the US. So for him to be the representative of the US in India and in a way, articulating India's voice, India's concerns in the US, inside the White House, in the NSA, in the important bodies, in the strategic area, in the space, in the geostrategic space, in the geopolitical space, amongst the think tanks, amongst the senior officials, whenever they have meetings at the White House. I think it's a very, very important visit. And for him to have this exposure, for Usha to come in as the Vice President's spouse, as the second lady, to bring in her children and to be accorded that sort of welcome by India, I think it's a very great, move at this stage, at the early stage of the Trump administration. They're just 2 months old into the White House. So for JD Vance to have come in so early into his career as Vice President, to have very intense interactions with India is going to be an extremely important, meeting, which is going to have a long-lasting sort of impact, and it will continue to benefit our relationship in a very big way. So we have to be very clear on the table. We have to be very sensitive to the US concerns, but we also have to articulate how the two countries, in our opinion, in our view, can work together, because a lot of the breaking India forces and the breaking US forces are similar at this point of time. And for us to tackle those forces together is going to be the most important aspect for the world, for India, and for the US. Thank you.
Professor Nalapat, great points, Ambassador Kapoor. Professor Nalapat, regardless of what happened during COVID, it's important to understand that both these countries suffered a lot during that phase, and there's been a history of India doing extremely well when it comes to Republican presidents. Would you attribute anything to that reality and that fact?
Well, the fact is that Prime Minister Modi has, from 2014 onwards, yes, I mean, at that time Trump was not president, but ever since Trump became president, Trump won 1.0, the reality is that he had a very close relationship with Donald Trump, and a much better relationship, if I may say so, than he had with President Biden. And frankly, the Biden White House was not friendly to India at all, despite the Vice President having Indian roots. She never really acknowledged those roots. I don't think she came anywhere near India during her campaign, and she tried to run away from that in a way that Usha Vance has not done. So I'd like to say very honestly that it is a very, very important visit, and I'm sure the Prime Minister and JD Vance, Vice President Vance, are going to discuss a lot of sensitive issues. And of course, the point is, a lot of these issues, a lot of the understanding that are reached may not be publicly revealed, because in statecraft, in diplomacy, especially, for example, where the tech sector is concerned, nobody would like to publicly reveal what we are planning and then have the Chinese come and understand it. So regarding the Indo-Pacific, security of the Indo-Pacific, nobody is going to publicly reveal what the US and Indian strategies are and how they can mesh and meld, because we don't want a country which is not friendly to India, not friendly to the US, to basically get wind of what is happening. So I would say, Vineet, it's a very, very important visit. I would say it's really a defining visit, and Prime Minister Modi knows that, and the welcome he has given to Vice President Vance and Usha Vance. And as I wrote in Sunday Guardian, I mean, we are welcoming, Usha and JD Vance to India, not the Vice President, but he's also the Vice President. And if I may say so, this is going to be one of the defining India-US visits. In fact, one of the defining foreign visits where India is concerned. And I would also like to add that, Vance is going to advance US interests. The point is there are so many things that India can do to also advance US interests. I think that's important to understand, because while advancing the US interests, there's so many areas of congruence with India, and Indians to understand that while advancing the Indian interest, there's so many areas of congruence with the United States. Let's not look at the optics. Let's not look at the superficials. The fact is, the tariff blow we got is nothing compared to a tariff blow on a particular neighbor of India. Nothing, actually. So I would say, Vineet, I'm full of hope about this particular visit, and I do believe it's going to be extremely productive from the point of view of very close relationship with Trump 2.0, a very crucial time. He's taken charge of the White House, and he would like to see his successor, somebody who's friendly to him. He wouldn't like to go through the horror of prosecutions and persecutions, frankly, again. So he's going to work hard at that, and Prime Minister Modi has been extending a warm hand to him from the start. So I'm very hopeful that the Vance visit is going to greatly accelerate the progress of the India-US agenda, where both countries can benefit from interaction with each other. As I said, a lot of that is not going to be public, and nor should it be. Thank you, Vinny.
Right, absolutely right. Ambassador Vora, taking a leaf out of what Professor Nalapat said, that it's pretty evident on what the priorities are for the Americans. Look at the tariffs which have been imposed on China, and they continue to be increased every time China retaliates or talks back.
I mean, those guys are stupid. Canada and China are the only two countries that have retaliated. But let me tell you, sir, that the future of the bilateral relationship. I go back to the 1960s. The advertisement for Virginia Slims cigarettes, that for the first time women were being introduced and asked to smoke. They were very attractive ads, scantily clad woman, etc. And the punchline, which I believe best describes the bilateral relationship, was, "You've come a long way, baby." I believe that is where we are today with the relationship between India and the United States. It's only going to go forward. There's no looking back, sir.
Mr. Faulkner, how do you look at the treatment that China is getting at this point in time? What should India be doing? Should we be rejoicing?
Well, absolutely. I mean, China wants to dominate the world. They want to dominate it militarily, as we're seeing with the atolls and challenges in the South China Sea and the Philippine territorial waters. They are basically doing their Belt and Road Initiative and their debt traps throughout Latin America. Thankfully, we're starting to push them back. The U.S. is starting to push them back on the Panama Canal, where they've basically been dominating the operations there for several years. So, again, China is getting rocked back on its heels by the tariffs, and getting rocked back on its heels by the strengthening of India. I want to interject, though, that another thing that we should be watching during the Vance visit is on April 22nd. He's speaking at the International Center. That could be a defining moment for him in his future, and a defining moment for the U.S. and India's future. When you start to have a major leader from a country have a major address in another country, as you look back through from especially Obama and Egypt and his basically apology tour back, sort of set the stage for his administration. This could be a major stage set, is that April 22nd International Center address that's coming up.
And Martin, why do you think that this kind of a sentiment was not really palpable when Joe Biden was around? Do you think that once again we dip down to this cycle of Democrats being pro-China and the Republicans being anti-China, or do you think there's more to that?
I think the problem is that Joe Biden had his policies weren't for being polite and political correct towards the whole world. He didn't had like a very defined ideology towards his country, towards how to protect his country or his allies. He wanted to basically be friends with everyone. He wanted to please everyone, and we saw a weak government. That's the reason there were no progress in commercial trade, because he was more focused in his woke agenda or in his inner woke agenda in the US. But now with Trump, I see that he's more focused in protecting what he thinks is important, like his trade partners. And India is by far the most important trade partner in the Southeast of Asia. So that's the reason I think this government is completely interested in moving forward with India and having a strong relationship.
And Professor Nalapad, what about India's permanent stay and permanent membership at the UN? The Americans have always advocated for it. They understand that the world order has changed and the UN is more or less defunct when it comes to its outreach. Is that an area where India definitely can expect America to support?
Look, the fact that the Chinese are going to veto that, the other permanent members, including Russia, will support. France and the UK definitely, both are friends of India. The United States would even sponsor it, but the Chinese are going to find some excuse to veto it by saying some absurd such a thing, like Pakistan should also be a permanent member of the UNSC, which is not acceptable. The second point is that I think we made a slight error of judgment in going along with Japan, Germany, and South Africa, if I'm not wrong, in our UN Security Council quest. We should have gone alone, and like Prime Minister Modi, frankly, believes in India being strong enough to go it alone. So I think we could have gone it alone, but even then there would not have been progress. But in this case, there's no progress at all, because Germany will not be welcome to France and the UK, and frankly to anybody else. They've got too much representation for the Europeans already. And as far as Japan is concerned, it's as toxic as India to China. So the Chinese and now the Russians will never allow that. So I think, frankly, Vineet, I doubt that in the foreseeable future there's going to be India as a permanent member. And quite frankly, you're quite right. Many UN institutions are doing well, such as UNESCO, but the Security Council is becoming completely deadlocked on every important issue, and frankly, deadlock means complete absence of progress. So I wouldn't hold my breath. At the same time, I don't believe, given the current circumstances, we have lost very much. Thank you.
Ambassador Vora, you and I have spoken in the past as well about India's permanent position in the United Nations, and you've had some, for the lack of a better word, strong reactions to that.
Sir, United Nations this year, am I correct? 2025 is going to be 80 years old, 80 years young. Do you have any 80-year-old thing in your house that you still use? I'm 74, I'm not 80. You don't, you throw it out. Throw this wretched thing out. And may I suggest something also, Professor Nalapad, if you agree, and Scott sir, if you agree, that's a very expensive piece of real estate that they have in Manhattan. Kick out all the diplomats, convert it into a nightclub. It'll do more for global harmony than what it is doing now.
You're absolutely right. Mr. Faulkner, your thoughts on the United Nations and, why it does not represent, 1.5 billion worth of humanity in its policies and its procedures?
The United Nations has long overstayed its welcome in the U.S. and well overstayed its welcome in the world. I mean, it is when you have some of the most totalitarian states now chairing human rights commissions and things. I mean, I wrote articles all of last year that the UN should be actually moved to someplace like Johannesburg, so that all the people who are currently living off the fat of the land in the New York City area can go and see what they've wrought in a place like Johannesburg. I think that the UN, there's very little support, certainly on the Republican side, certainly within the Trump world, for the UN to even exist, certainly for the US to continue funding it, and for people like myself, for the US even to host it. It's long overdue for an overhaul, long overdue for abolition, and just like the ambassador just said, you have an entity that was created at the end of World War II. Nationalist China was the permanent national Security Council person, not Communist China. So the whole concept of who's on that board in the Security Council is totally absurd. I mean, it should be like the top 5 or 6 economies in the world, at which point India is clearly one of those. So it is so absurd that we are still having to put up with the United Nations on so many of these fronts, and certainly to even keep hosting it in New York.
All right, you're absolutely right, sir. And that is something that definitely is on the horizon and on the agenda for India as well as the United States as they work out and work through these challenging times by means of cooperation, friendship, bilateral cooperation, and these important meetings as well. Would like to thank everyone who joined us on this conversation.